Hello. Microphone seems to be working. How y'all doing this morning, or afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world? Wait for see if anybody else joins. Hey, McBuffin, thanks for joining. Shouldn't be too long of a stream today, as I don't actually have that much to talk about. I didn't read that. I didn't read as much as I normally do in any given month, in terms of series variety, at least. Anyway. Also, is my audio coming through all right? Can anyone hear me? Because it'd be awkward if no one could hear me. Let's share this to Twitter. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, audio seems to come through. Cool. Just yeah, I only have Twitter and Discord rather. I might send one to I'll send a link to a couple of others. Let me just open up my Discord. Taking a while. There's actually a couple of digital series that I've gotten my hands on from a friend Bakamatsu, who got some series on one of the Kodansha Humble Bundles, and he was kind enough to send some across to me. One particularly I'm looking forward to is Reading Noise by Tsutomu Nihei, which is, from what I understand, a prequel of Blam. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. I have it digitally now, so if Bakamatsu joins, if he's free, then I'll give my thanks to him directly. Hey, Manga Crash, thanks for joining, man. Good to see you around. I was just saying at the start of the stream that I don't have a lot to talk about in terms of manga I read. In total, I read 4 different series this month, which is not as much as I usually read. But once I get into it, you'll understand why I haven't read as much as I usually like to read in any given month. Not sure when you started for reals, but I'll be getting me my lunch to eat with you guys. Yeah, cool. I mean, I've literally just started now. We've been streaming maybe for about 5 minutes, so I haven't even gotten into any of the series I'm talking about yet. So yeah. Was it the horror bundle from last year? I'm not too sure. He didn't specify. He just said one of the last Kodansha Humble Bundles, but I assume it was the horror one because he showed me a big list of the series that he got on it, and they all look like horror titles. Like Sankareya and Noise and Happiness. What else did he get? He got quite a lot for like €17 or £17 or something like that, which is just amazing. Oh, he also got Dragonhead as well. I think he sent that across to me. I'm really looking forward to reading that. It's also something I've had my eyes on. So yeah, I'll try and read Noise and Dragonhead this month perhaps, as I do want to get into those digital titles. So Buffin, I've heard of those, the Humble Bundles. That's good. Have you read Space Brothers? I haven't. No, it was on my to watch list on Crunchyroll for ages. Cause I'm sure there's an anime on Crunchyroll for Space Brothers. The concept of it and the whole idea behind it really intrigued me, but never got round to it. So no, I heard it's quite a long series actually. Is it still ongoing as well? I'm not too sure. Yeah. Too little time, too much manga. Crash. You've got the horror one. Okay, cool. Yeah, Had Noise. Haven't read a lot of them, but yeah, Dragonhead is amazing, and Kisane as well. Yeah, I think it's it sounds like you got the same one. But I'm definitely going to read Noise because I want to get. I really want to do a Nihei binge. From listening to the recent podcast from Manga Splaining. I think it was a week or two ago. They did a special on Tsutomu Nihei, where they discussed Blam and Opossums and Knights of Sidonia and Noise. Just it was like an artist kind of retrospective, just to kind of see how his artwork has developed, because his artwork, from what I've seen of his earlier stuff and his later stuff, has changed significantly. I guess like his style came to be more commercial, as was his like sort of storytelling. So I'll be interested to see how it's evolved as well when I read Knights of Sidonia, which kind of adopts that newer art style of his. So I might invest in a Humble Bundle if there's going to be another one this year, if it's not already out as well. You know, like the Halloween one. I've never ever looked at them. So, and considering that it seems as though a lot of the series that you get with them are, for the most part, full series for that price, and you know that some of them are out of print, and obviously having the opportunity to support the creators as well, it seems a bit of a no-brainer. So, anywho, like I said, I've got 4 different series to talk about today. So let's just make a start, shall we? First, at the start of September, I read the first 7 volumes, which is all of the volumes that I own of the series of Real by Takehiko Inoue. I think this is the first sports series I've ever read. I have mentioned in previous live streams that sports manga is a genre of heavily neglected when it comes to my purchasing habits. But yeah, the first 7 volumes of Real, I've actually owned these 7 volumes for years, but I suppose the fact that it's sport and it's about basketball, wheelchair basketball particularly, which is just a sport I'm not interested in, kind of put me off, and prevented me from reading it sooner, which is kind of ignorant. But what did I like about Real? Everything, for the most part. It is a fantastic series. I absolutely loved this. And it basically centers around 3 different people. It's got 3 main characters, and they all share an undying love and passion for basketball or some kind of sport, but it eventually becomes wheelchair basketball that they all have in common. And it basically deals with these individual characters experiencing some kind of trauma in their life, which kind of brings them to wheelchair basketball in some way. So one character suffers with bone cancer and has to get his leg amputated. Prior to that, he was a semi-professional sprinter, so obviously it sends him to rock bottom. Another character, the first character you meet, doesn't get crippled himself, but he is involved in an accident where he is responsible for a serious injury of one of his passengers, because he was riding a motorbike with a pillion passenger irresponsibly, and crashed, and the girl who was on the back of the motorbike ended up in a wheelchair. So he's just racked with just ever consuming guilt over this, and he's trying desperately to try and make amends. And then the final character is in a traffic accident and gets run over by a lorry and ends up breaking his spine. So it deals with really horrible circumstances. People at the worst points in their life, trying to find some form of either redemption or trying to reestablish that vigor of life, trying to find purpose and meaning when everything's been stripped away from you. So I was surprised at how human it was. It's it's not really a series about wheelchair basketball at all. In fact, the first 7 volumes that I read didn't really have any wheelchair basketball kind of stories at all. It very much was focused on the characters, the horrible kind of recovery that you have to go through when you're in an accident where you break your neck or you break your spine. The traumatic journey of rehabilitation and trying to gain the upper body strength in order to be able to independently move around in a wheelchair. It really explores like how absolutely how difficult it is to even just balance yourself up when literally you can't move like your hips or your legs. Your balance has to come from your upper body. So it really delves into the kind of rehabilitation that the characters that one of the characters particularly has to go through, and how difficult that journey is. So it really is. It's heavily character focused, and it's very emotional. It's a powerful read. It's a really powerful read, and one thing that I like about it as well is how it addresses the fact that people with disabilities, physical disabilities, just because they might have a physical handicap, it doesn't mean that they can't be athletes. And it addresses the idea of people discrediting the sport of wheelchair basketball as this sort of pity sport. That they're disabled, so of course let's cheer them on because they're doing something that's good for them. But ultimately it's only wheelchair basketball. It addresses that kind of thing, and it tackles it and it challenges it, and it says no, wheelchair basketball is a legitimate sport with legitimate athletes that deserve legitimate praise because they put in the same effort, probably even more so, arguably, than an athlete who's able-bodied, and that is no better represented through one of the main characters, Tomomi, who is able-bodied. He was the one who was responsible for crippling the girl on the bike. So it really addresses that stigma towards disability as well, which I really liked. I mean, I've obviously got no horse in this race. I do have a friend who is disabled. He's got scoliosis, and he played wheelchair basketball a couple of years he coached wheelchair baskall years ago now, and I remember going to a game, and I remember trying it out myself. And just maneuvering the wheelchair itself was just so difficult. So that's quite a fond memory I have, which it reaffirmed to me that no matter what adversities come by you in your life, that there's always, when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up, right? You could be crippled for life and still live a long, healthy, productive life, and engage and indulge in your passions and your hobbies. There's not really any restrictions. It's just really about readjusting your passions, perhaps. Obviously, you never be a sprinter again, but what else can you do with what you have? You have to work with the dice that will roll for you. And I really like that drive and passion in the characters. More often than not, these sort of series that deal with characters, going against all the odds and fighting against adversity, don't have the same level of trauma that the characters in this have. And I think the title absolutely represents it fantastically. It is real. It is reality. It is the brutal truth of what people go through. There's no superpowers in this. There's no plot armor. There's no arse pulls. There's no, there's no shortcuts because it's real, And I think that title, it really is perfect. And obviously let's talk about the artwork as well. It's Takahiko Inoue. The artwork is as you would expect, absolutely sublime. Let's try and give you a really good example. I mean, you do see some wheelchair basketball in it, like here, but it really isn't the focus. I mean, this is volume 7, and it's only just getting to the point where they've established their own team and they're thinking of competing professionally. So it's taken 7 volumes to get to this, which I really like. It's a real slow burn, but not a slow burn as in, oh come on, let's wait for it to get good. It's just, it really, it's patient. It really takes its time to really explore the characters. So when it gets to the point where they are starting to compete professionally and they've found, they've found their new passion, you really, really are rooting for them because you've been there with them on the journey to get there. It is fantastic character development, and fantastically paced story. It doesn't feel too slow or sluggish in any way. It holds your hand through it to a certain degree, and I really like that. Obviously, Takahiko Inoue has a real passion for basketball, so that shines through, abundantly. I haven't read Slam Dunk, so I don't know how different that may be to this series. Whether or not that's more faster paced, or I really don't know. But Real is phenomenal. This is only obviously the second work by Takahiko Inoue that I personally have read, and I would still say that Vagabond is my favourite of the two, purely by virtue of me having read more of it. I mean, I've read 36 volumes out of the 7 of these, and fortunately volume 7 rather, this one leaves off on a big cliffhanger. Volume 8 is, I'm hoping, out of stock and not out of print. I'm really hoping that Viz decide to reprint this at some point in the future, because I really do want to continue with it, because it's, this is roughly halfway through. Volume 15 is due to be coming out at some point, so I would hope that Viz do the pragmatic thing and give the fans, really what they want, because there's no point. I don't really see any point reading this digitally, because the digital volumes are really just they're similarly priced to the physical volumes. They're really expensive, so I don't like the idea of paying the recommended retail price of a physical volume but only getting a digital product. That kind of rubs me up the wrong way. But if it was available on a subscription basis, like most other things, then yeah, I would read it digitally if I wasn't able to get it physically. But yeah, Real, that's really all I have to say about it. It's a fantastic series. Each of the 3 main characters are absolutely fantastic. Probably my favorite is Hisanobu, because he starts off as the stereotypical jock character, really arrogant, really self-absorbed. He's the pretty boy. He's academic. He's studious. He's really popular with the girls. All the guys hate him because he's just a cocky bastard, and he really gets brought down to size. And even when he's in his recovery, he's still really arrogant and still really rude and self-destructive, as he's trying to come to terms with his new reality. His horrible personality is still there. So it's, you can also hate someone who is disabled, because disabled people are human too. I think the worst thing you can do, or the worst way you can treat a disabled person is pity them, right? I remember, give you a good example. I remember years ago there was an advert, and it was I can't remember exactly what it was advertising. I think it was something to do with disability or something, and it was a guy in a restaurant, this is basically the setup of the advert. A guy in a restaurant, and he's speaking to the waiter like absolute dog crap, like the dog crap on the bottom of bottom of the shoe. And then at the end of the advert, he realizes he's in a wheelchair, and like the punchline is, disabled people can be assholes too, just like every other human, just like any person, So, yeah, you don't need to hold disabled people with padded gloves. You know what I mean? They're very capable, very independent. Even from my own experience with my friend, he's very independent, very capable. Living alone, or just functioning alone, and it's very really well exemplified in this. Because the disabled characters who were either born disabled or because obviously it's not just the three main characters. There's other characters as well that you get to meet who have already been involved in wheelchair basketball, for years. And there's one particular character, his name escapes me, and he's just an absolute badass. He's an absolute tank, big stocky guy. And another guy who lost his leg. And you get to see you get to meet him very briefly in the backstory of one of the other characters, the character who loses his leg, and he's just so cool. He's such a cool guy. So yeah, disabled people are people too. Yeah, I could sing the praises of Real all day. Let's have a read of the comments. See what y'all are saying. Crush. I read Manga and Abara from Nihei. His art style in it is great since it looks like Giga. Yeah, H.I. Giga, definitely. I love Alien, but the stories were very lacking, sadly. Yeah, Nihei is very much style over substance. I absolutely loved Abara and Biomega. Biomega was actually the first manga by him I read. And I absolutely loved it, but there were so many elements of it that were missing, and so many unresolved plot threads that it just left me wanting more. Thankfully, I never felt like that with Abara or Blam. Even Blam and Abara very much to me felt very complete. But yeah, there is it. In order to understand his works, you really need to do some digging. I found that like reading essays and stuff while I was reading Blam, from writing reviews and things like that, really helped with my understanding. Getting other people's interpretation of it, and kind of tying together my own sort of assumptions with it, and like, oh yeah, I agree with that, and oh yeah, I see what that visual metaphor meant. Yeah, I love Nihei. Buffing Manga Splaining is quite a good podcast to introduce you to new titles. Absolutely. I think there was one where they covered a manga about fonts. Oh, What the Font? Yeah. Now that would have been a manga that I'd normally never have checked out. Yeah, to be honest, I'll probably still never check out What the Font. I mean, I remember years ago I studied graphic design, or briefly studied graphic design in college. And I found it so boring, like learning about like typesetting and fonts and sans serifs and all this sort of stuff. It was so tiring. So I don't really want to go back to that. So Real sounds like an interesting read for sure. I don't think I've read too many manga about characters dealing with disabilities. Silent Voice comes to mind, but apart from that, not many. Yeah, Silent Voice as well. The main character, she's deaf, isn't she? So, and I see quite a lot of manga now being released that kind of deal with disabilities and sort of people with different sort of neurotypical behaviour, whether that be physical or mental. It's cool, so long as obviously it's presented in a way that is faithful to to those real lived experiences. I think you would need to have either lived an experience like that or know people really in order to accurately portray living with some kind of disability. Obviously Takahiko Inoue doesn't have a disability, but he seems as though perhaps he's done his research or maybe knows or close friends or family members, perhaps, I don't know. But he seems to have done his research and done justice to people living with disabilities who who play sport and who can play sport and who are athletes in their own right. Kind of curious because Slam Dunk at least was a great story, mostly because of the character arc of the main character. Yeah, I've heard lots of praise about the main character in Slam Dunk. One common criticism I hear about Slam Dunk though is that the ending is very abrupt. So yeah, I suppose maybe that's kind of kept me away from it. So Real sounds like it can do that on a different level. Yeah, 100%. The character development in it is just it's amazing, really really good. And it's not even just about the characters as well. It's about the characters peripheral to them, so like their friends and their family, and the effect that it has on them. Like the Hisanobu, the arrogant guy who I was talking about, like his mum really goes through the ringer. He's got really bad issues with his parents. So yeah, there's not really any characters in Real that I can really fault. They're all really nuanced and multifaceted. So I mean they feel like real people, and if you're reading a story where the people feel real and relatable, then the author's doing a good job. I didn't know scoliosis could be that bad. I have it too, but never to the point where I needed a wheelchair. Yeah, his back, his spine is literally like an S shape. He's got like a big, he's got like a hump. So scoliosis can affect people in different ways. You can have it very mildly, where it's just not noticeable at all. Sounds perhaps like you crush, or it can be extreme where you require surgery, and like he's constantly in a lot of pain, and he's on the extreme end of the spectrum of scoliosis. So yeah, it can affect people in different ways. Slam Dunk is very basketball focused, at least. Yeah, it seems so. Just judging by like the covers and stuff like that, it seems very much focused on very much the sport, like tournaments and rivalries and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Disabled people are people to ARC 2021. Yeah, how profound of me. Yeah. People die when they are killed. Yeah, I know. I'm Captain Obvious over here. I know I'm stating the obvious, and people should, but it's. I only said that because, Real, like I said, it addresses the notion that people stigmatize disabled people as being lower than what they are. Someone to be pitied and looked after. There's a lot of stigmatization towards like disabled characters in this. But yeah, no, it should be obvious, shouldn't it? Disabled people are people. Still need to read Blam at some point. I think the ending might be a bit abrupt, but the final game is one of the best sports games I've ever seen in a manga, so it's worth reading regardless. Yeah. I think another thing that kind of puts me off is just the length of it as well. I think it's like 31 volumes, and the volumes aren't really easy to come across over here in the UK. I mean, I've never seen Slam Dunk on the shelves of like local comic book shops here over in the UK, so I can't speak obviously for its popularity over here, as it's never been distributed over here. I'd need to buy it probably most likely from the US, and yeah, I don't know what the cost implication of that would be, but I imagine it would be higher than what it would be, should I have been able to buy it locally. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing that I read. This is quite a bulky one. So I finally got around to reading the 2 volumes of High School of the Dead. These are the full colour deluxe editions. This is volume 2, and it was quite a sobering read, in fact, because, as I'm sure you all know, Daisuke Sato, the writer, passed away a few years ago. So unfortunately, this is now discontinued. It'll never be continued. But it's essentially, I mean, if you've seen the anime, which obviously exploded, this time about 7 or 8 years ago, it literally is what it says on the cover. It's high school students battling the dead. There's some kind of zombie apocalypse that's happened. There's no real kind of explanation or reason as to why. Not that there has to be, but the dead are walking the earth, and it's up to badass high school students to to survive and get to where they need to. And it basically is very sort of time orientated, so it really just follows. I would say that the entire manga that was obviously written and released probably spans over the course of maybe a couple of weeks, couple of days maybe, because they're essentially leaving the high school where they are, where the outbreak, they're at school when the outbreak happens. So their first concern is escaping and getting home to their families, finding their mums and dads, brothers and sisters or whatever. So that's really it. It's basically their journey to meet up with their parents. But it's very much just style and sexiness. It's obviously very ecchi. Shoji Sato is very good at drawing the female form. I'll try to show you something that's not too explicit, because I mean it's ecchi and there is a bit of nudity. Like, I mean, there's like a shower scene, the obligatory shower scene, in like the first volume that does show nudity, but it's nothing too, it's not like on the Gantz level of ecchi where it's like it's almost pornographic. It's just it's just TNA. All of the female characters have big bazungas, as you can see, and it's just that it's very tongue in cheek. It doesn't take itself serious. It's very much aware of how silly it is. I mean, it became a meme, didn't it? I'm sure you all remember that episode of High School of the Dead where Ray, where the main character, the main guy character, is like shooting the gun, and like the gun strap is like wrapped around Ray's boobs, and like every time he like fires a shot, like her boobs just go blah, 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 blah. And then obviously you see the bullet flying through Seiko's boobs. It's so silly. It's just so silly, but it's fun. It's really enjoyable, and seeing it in full color, and the artwork makes the color really makes the artwork pop. It's just a really fun ride. Did feel a little bit poignant, because there are also really cool extras, one of which being interviews with Daisuke Sato and Shoji Sato, and you can really see the determination that Daisuke Sato had when he had a forward plan. He had a plan as to what he wanted to do with the series before his death, and even in the interviews, he addresses the hiatuses that he was taking at the time of its publication due to his health. He mentioned his like heart problems and stuff like that. So it's really poignant knowing that it was ultimately heart problems that killed him. As he had great ambitions for continuing the series. Unfortunately, the volumes that were released don't collect the entire series, so there's still one more chapter that I'm yet to read, and I do believe it's available on Comixology, so I might pick it up. But yeah, I mean, as you would expect, it leaves off on a cliffhanger. There's nothing really wrapped up, but for what it is, I would still say it's worth reading. It is fun. What you get is fun, and you can kind of make up your own mind as to where it would go eventually. It's one of those things. Again, it's very much style over substance. There's no deep narrative. It's just a very typical zombie story with all of the cliches, all of the tropes, and badass babes, chopping heads off and carrying cool guns. It very much it is what is on the cover. It's it's waifus fighting zombies. What more could you want? There's not really much to say about it. One thing that I wasn't too sure of, because I always thought that, I always just assumed rather that Daisuke and Shoji Sato were brothers, but in the interviews, Shoji Sato refers to Daisuke Sato as sensei, and it just seems a little bit weird that you would refer to your older brother as sensei. I don't know if it's maybe a cultural thing, but no, I wouldn't refer to, if I had a brother, an older brother, I wouldn't refer to them as, my teacher. No way. So I don't know if maybe they're pen names, or maybe they just have the same surname, because Sato isn't a unique name, is it? It's a pretty common name in Japan. So maybe they just so happen to have the same name. I'm not too sure, but or maybe it might be due to the poor translation. Unfortunately, if I have to criticize this somewhat, it's the poor translation. And what I mean by that is how janky the dialogue is between the characters. As an example, there's no abbreviation of words, or there's very little abbreviation of words. So instead of saying "they're over there," they'll say "they are over there," and it just seems really robotic and janky. So there's a lot. The translation leaves much to be desired, and it can make for a bit of a cumbersome reading experience when the characters are talking to each other like robots. But it doesn't really matter ultimately, because it's not a manga you read for the interesting character interactions and character development or anything like that. Again, it's just style over substance and really cool art. So let's have a look at the comments, because I don't really have much to say about this. It's got really gorgeous art. One thing that I really liked about this second volume is that it comes with the art book included. So Shoji Sato's art book that shows off artwork as well from his other series, Triage X, as well as other projects that he worked on. So I thought that was really cool. So you get Lightning Pop. Lightning Pop is the name of the art book. So you just get gorgeous color pages with beautiful artwork. Just cool babes. Just take off the cover real quick, because I don't want to damage the dust jacket. Yeah, look, it's just, I mean, if you've seen his artwork before, you know how awesome it is. I think that's from Lollipop Chainsaw, in fact. Because he's done artwork for games as well. So you do really get your money's worth with this. I mean, I've never been a big lover of art books or anything like that, but it's not something I would buy individually. But to know that it's with it's wrapped up with the volume as well is pretty cool. Got some fold out posters as well. So I mean, it's a really great release, a really, really good release, and I would highly recommend it. I think that it's a reasonable price. Even though it's obviously discontinued, it's not something that really leaves you yearning for more. I mean, it would be nice if we did get more, but I'm satisfied with what I've got. I may read the final chapter 30. That was never released in volume form. I might not. I'm not yearning for more. Let's see the comments. Right. I think it's in relation to real. That's true. It's kind of like they're being treated like children due to that. Must be very frustrating, to be honest. Yeah, it's just patronising. Yeah. But I can see it being expensive. Yeah, right. Regarding Slam Dunk, you must have read it online. Yeah. I've been moving into buying manga more often, at least. But yeah, most of what I read was scans. I used to read scans. The majority of my manga reading back 10 years ago was through scans. I don't judge people who read scans. It's not my place to tell you where you should read your manga. Me buying manga is my personal choice. I think it's the accessibility of scans. I mean, scans were so digital subscription services obviously weren't as prevalent as they are now. So scans were the most accessible things when you wanted to read something, and also that sense of community as well, where you know that everyone else was talking about series, and the only way to read it was via scans, or if the English releases for particular manga just weren't up to date with the scans. It really is only in the last 5 or 6 years that the manga industry has really started to boom again. We're in a new golden age of manga where we're getting chapters released simultaneously with the Japanese releases, sometimes before, and volumes are physical manga is released more in line with when they're released in Japan. We're getting series, and we're getting 1 or 2 volumes behind the Japanese releases, sometimes completely up to date with the Japanese releases. So I think that's a testament to the demand still for physical manga in the West. So yeah, there's still scan laters and stuff like that, but I would say that the balance has shifted. I mean, just look at the manga community now. I mean, when I started uploading to YouTube in 2012, 2013, there was a community there, but it was mostly just chapter reviewers, people reviewing the latest week's scans. Now it's more about collection videos, manga hauls, people actually going out and purchasing. There's a pride that people have in showing off the collection, which is great. And the proof is in the pudding. In so far as last year, manga outsold US or Western comics for the first time. So yeah, the balance has shifted. And albeit I don't read scans anymore, it's just mostly just because for me they're not as accessible anymore, and I don't like going on sites that have 1 billion adverts. And I like to support the creators too. But I remember the days where there was Manga Stream and Manga Reader and One Manga, which was the main hub for reading scans, and obviously that got shut down. But One Manga was it literally had every single manga you could possibly conceive on there. It was a haven. It was so accessible, so it's completely understandable why why people mostly scanlated or read scanlations rather. Yeah, for a minute there I was actually thinking of getting High School of the Dead. Then I came to my senses. Yeah, it's not for everyone. I mean, there's no substance to it at all. So it's not something that you're going to read and get some profound understanding from, or some really deep meaning or connection with. It's just it's popcorn manga. Crash. I was born a pirate. My dad pirates music and movies since I was a kid. My PS1 was cracked. Oh mate, back in the 90s, man. I had a chipped PS2, and I remember going to car boot sales, and you could just buy cinema ripped DVDs with in really poor quality and stuff. I would, it was the same growing up for me as well. I remember there was always somebody going around selling DVDs in little plastic bags, and it was literally just probably someone in a cinema with a camcorder. In fact, I remember the first time I watched Pokemon, the first movie was on a pirated video, and the first 15 minutes were cut off. So I never saw the entirety of Pokemon the first movie until I was an adult, because the only video I had when I was a kid had the first 15 minutes cut off. So that's just how it was, just how it was, man. Big Bazungas of the Dead. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's just TNA. Where am I? There we go. Wasn't there a manga about a guy with his zombie girlfriend? Yeah, I think that's Sankareya, Undying Love. That was something I wanted to read years ago, but never got around to it. But like I said, Bakamatsu got it on the Humble Bundle last year, so I'm not sure if he sent that across to me, but I might ask him to send that across to me as well, because it might be something I read. Crush. I read High School of the Dead before the anime came out even. and I was disappointed. That was mostly because I didn't know what to expect. I was hoping for a Romero-like manga. Yeah, if you're looking for George A. Romero levels of storytelling, then you're not going to find that in High School of the Dead. High School of the Dead is when I read it, it felt like a love letter to those kind of, cheesy, zombie horror movies like the Romeros and stuff like that. Especially given that it references things like that directly, like they go to a shopping mall and they even reference like George. They mentioned Romero's name. You can see as well in there's a nice nod to Edgar Wright, like in one of the first. In fact, you can't see it because it's in the first volume. It's the second volume, but there's a reference to Shaun of the Dead in like the first chapter, which I always loved. So yeah, High School of the Dead is it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just it's a love letter to zombie movies, and that because I went into it knowing what it was. My expectations weren't. I wasn't disappointed. Crash. Yeah, you mentioned Sankareya. Or something zombie Desuka. That does ring a bell. I don't know where it is, but Korewa Zombie Desuka. I don't know what that is. I prefer my manga in like I always use the English titles. Like I know people like to say like Adolf Nisugu for Meshes to Adolf, or what's My Hero Academia, Boku no Hero or whatever it is. Boku no Hero Academia, whatever. I just prefer to use the English titles. So yeah, I know some people like to use the Japanese titles for whatever reason, but it's just my preference. High School of the Dead looks really good, though I probably wouldn't get it because of what series it is. Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, it's not for everyone. Looking back at the manga scene in 2008 when I started reading to now, it evolved so much. I'm happy with that. You remember one manga as well, I assume. Yeah, that was good times, man. Obviously not for the industry, but that's when I really got into reading manga. Unfortunately I had Scans to thank for that. Anyway, let's move on to the penultimate series I read for this month, and this is the series that really kind of slowed things down for me. Even though it's only a single volume, or rather a 2-in-1 omnibus, it was a very, very slow read. And that is The Two Faces of Tomorrow by James P. Hogan, or at least it's based on the novel by James P. Hogan, and but the artwork, the manga is adapted by Yukinobu Hoshino. And this is hard sci-fi. I knew it was going to be hard sci-fi, but I didn't know how hard this sci-fi was going to be. This is incredibly dense in the amount of terminology, the technical terminology it uses, and trying to sort of. Let's just explain what it is. So basically, this is set in the late 21st century, and it centers around a group of scientists who have created an artificial intelligence, an AI, that basically it's a low level AI that they can still control, but it basically controls like all of them, all of Earth's main sort of functions, like banking and the motorway system, and just basically all aspects of your everyday life, all the mundane little things like maybe switching on your kettle. Everything is automated with this AI. But as science grows and knowledge about the AI grows, they're finding that there are certain limitations. So they set up an experiment by giving the AI instinct, intuition, decision making, to make it more human. So to give an AI instinct makes it much more human, and because there's a risk of it going rogue and perhaps seeing humanity as a roadblock. They set up the experiment in space on this big space station called Janus, and they intentionally give it an instinct, but set it to go rogue. So basically, it's an experiment where they're trying to get data to see how it reacts to becoming self-sufficient. What it will do when it goes rogue, before they implement such a high-level AI to everyday life on Earth. It's basically what would happen if Skynet, if Skynet in Terminator was if they did that intentionally, if they allowed Skynet to go rogue. It's really, really interesting. That the concept behind it is fantastic, and considering how old the novel is, I think the original novel is from like the 1950s or 1960s. The ideas it deals with are really ahead of its time. I mean, the manga itself was adapted in 1993, so some of the things are a little bit dated in it, but it still deals with it. It still kind of puts across ideas that we're still trying to work out now. Like things being automated, for instance, like self-driving cars and things like that. Obviously, we're still working on those, and we do have self-driving cars, but we don't see them in everyday life. They're not commercially available, or not as commercially available as regular cars, as an example. So it's really, really interesting. The difficult thing about it is that it's so technologically dense, and it's hard sci-fi in that it tries to ground the science in reality and explain every tiny little nook and cranny of the science behind what is happening, that it just gets bogged down with so much jargon and acronyms and sciencey sort of terminology that just kind of goes over your head. So it's a good read, but it's not an easy read. It's a bit mentally exhausting. I mean, I read maybe 1 or 2 chapters a day, and just my eyes were just kind of just glazing over, and I'd read a page and then have to read it again because I've just completely missed it. Like, it's one of those where it's engaging, but you have to be really alert. Maybe drink a Red Bull or something before reading a chapter, because your brain needs to be on the ball when reading this. It is a real slog. So it took me about 2 weeks to read this. I would look at it and I was like, not today. No, not today. Or I'd finish work and just be like, not today. No, I'll read some more of it tomorrow. I just kept putting it off. But that isn't to say it's not a bad series. It's just really, it's like reading Ghost in the Shell. Like how Shiro Masamune really is. He's a real tech nerd. He just loves all that just super high tech jargon. It's just like that. But despite that, I mean, let's just kind of give you an example of a really dense looking page. Thankfully, it was only the first half of the story that's really dense. Like the second half is more action orientated. I mean, I'll show you some of the artwork. I mean, the artwork is just phenomenal. Character designs, really gorgeous, really sort of accurate. Anatomically. But let's just kind of give you an example of just like a really jargony sort of. Yeah, I mean, it's just, as you can see, the pages are quite text heavy. I mean, that's just, I mean, it's not a great example really. But it's a lot of scientists kind of sitting around in board meetings, debating with each other over the viability of implementing such a high level AI into everyday life, and what the risks and benefits of that would be, what the actual implications long term of that would be, and whether or not it could be used as a means to further evolve humanity, or whether or not AI would essentially leave humanity in the dust, and whether humanity would become redundant, and a hindrance to the evolution of the new potentially dominant AI species. I mean, I'm really interested in that sort of stuff. I mean, scientists already, even just in everyday life, are already predicting that there's going to be a technological kind of pivot at some point in the future where an AI is developed that supersedes human intelligence. I can't remember there's a specific term, ominous sounding term for it. And obviously us as humanity, how destructive and prone to to mistakes we are. Would such a high level intelligence see us as a threat, or would a high such a high artificial intelligence be able to coexist with us peacefully? So it asks some really, really interesting questions and gives some really, really interesting speculations as to what the possibilities could be on both sides. So I do highly recommend this. Puffin, I know you're trying to get your hands on this, so I hope I'm not making it difficult for you by explaining and talking about something that is really, really interesting, something that you really, really want to read. Because it is a good read, and I do hope you manage to get your hands on it. I'm sad to know that it's it's not as readily available. I mean, this I think this was released in 2006 over here in English. Thankfully, I was able to get it for retail price, but it's not as readily available as it was. I'll try to show you some more cool artwork. I mean, I got real kind of like 2001 Space Odyssey, OG Gundam vibes from this, because even though it's like it's got this kind of like far out sort of high tech, hard sci-fi narrative to it, it does seem really believable, and I don't know whether or not that's a testament to the original author James P. Hogan or whether the adaptation by Yukinobu Hoshino is doing it justice like that, but it is crafted in painstaking detail, and that is evident in the technology. That's it even explains like because the station that it's set on, this Janus thing, it's like this rotating disc, and it rotates in order to generate like centrifugal force, in order to generate gravity, singularity. That's it. Yes, the technological singularity. Thank you, Crash. That's the term I was thinking of. But yeah, but anyway, it's like a Halo. It's like if you played the Halo games, it's kind of like that. It's this massive station with its own atmosphere, and inside it's got like landscapes and mountains and plateaus, and it's like a world in itself. It's massive, and it rotates to generate gravity, and that's an easy enough concept to wrap your head around. Centrifugal force. If you spin something fast enough, the force is greater at the end, because that's spinning faster than what's spinning closer to the center of the motion. But it goes into like 10 times more detail, like how the mechanically how that spinning device works. It seems like unnecessary detail, but it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good, but it's just dense. And would I read it again? Maybe in about 10 years' time. Probably not anytime soon. Yeah, Puffin, thanks for joining, man. I'm actually going to be talking about 7 billion needles next. So it's maybe you can come back and watch that part. But yeah, thanks for joining. But yeah, that's been the Two Faces of Tomorrow. Let's have a quick read of the chat before I start talking about the last thing I read. Yeah, Crash reminds me of your experience with the Ghost in the Shell manga. That's absolutely what it's like. You weren't a fan, yeah. Yes, I mentioned it. Yeah, so like I said, the last thing I read was actually something I read a couple of times now, and that's 7 Billion Needles by Nobuaki Tadano. 4 volumes. And the reason I reread this is because I'm actually selling it. I'm selling it to Puffin, in fact. and I wanted to talk about it today before I ship it off to him, because I've decided to unhaul it, remove it from my collection, because I used to love this series. It was one of my favorite series, but I think it's something as my tastes have developed and more series that I've read, it's fallen out of favor with me. It's still a good series, but it's by no means to the high standards that I used to hold it to. And I think one of the main reasons that made me want to reread it was again it was Mangasplaining did an episode on this earlier this year at some point, and they were very critical of it, and it kind of made me reevaluate like whether or not I would feel the same way if I read it again. And I did. I read it again, and the score was downgraded on my anime list. It's not as good as I used to think it was. It is. I would say it's quite generic. It's very much. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. It's okay. It's an okay series. Whereas if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said it's one of the best things I've ever read. Basically, it's about it's an adaptation of an old novel from the 50s called Needle by Hal Clement. This is adapted by Nobuaki Tadano with these really beautiful, stylish covers. This is one of Vertical's earliest releases, when at a time when Vertical was really kind of pushing the envelope on localizing series that as I say quite a lot off the beaten track. And this is essentially it's another sci-fi. It's about this high school girl. She's quite aloof, doesn't really have any friends, quite standoffish, but ultimately a nice girl. And one day, this meteorite comes crashing down, hurtling towards Earth, and she's on the beach. She's on a school trip. She notices this, what she thinks is a shooting star, but then she notices it's on a really strange trajectory, and it basically makes a beeline straight for her. And as you can see on the cover there, utterly incinerates her. So you're like, okay, sure, she's dead. And then the next page, she just like wakes up in school and she's like, wait, what the hell? And it turns out that the meteorite was actually some kind of extraterrestrial life form, and wasn't actually supposed to kill her. It was purely incidental, and this being has now merged with the very fiber of her being, and has rebuilt her on an atomic level. So now it's kind of like it's sort of like it's sort of like Parasite. A sort of average high school kid has to coexist with a super intelligent extraterrestrial life form, and she has superpowers. And basically the purpose of this life form that's merged with her is essentially it was chasing another similar life form, a much more malevolent life form that's purpose is to wreak havoc. Its purpose is to exterminate life on its host planet. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like an intergalactic policeman, I guess. So this it's like a cat and mouse sort of thing, where Hikaru, the main girl, and her host alien called Horizon are trying to find this other malevolent similar being called Maelstrom from basically wiping out and exterminating the human race. So it very much is like average girl gets superpowers, has to try and save all her friends, and at the same time learn what it is to kind of come out of her shell sort of thing. It's very run of the mill, standard sort of shonen tropes, leave my friends alone and sort of thing, But it's interesting. It's got some nice, charming artwork. The characters, for the most part, are likable, save for Hikaru, who does get a bit grating and a bit angsty for my liking. Maybe it's because I was angsty at the time that I first read this, and maybe I could relate to Hikaru like at the time that I read it. I can't relate to her now because she just comes across as a bit of a bit of a moody teenager, which is really what she is. But you know, it's okay for what it is. I wouldn't read it again. I mean, I think this was maybe the third time that I read it, for the time that I've owned it, and for that reason, you know, I'm happy to kind of let it go, and hopefully, you know, somebody else will enjoy it as much as I used to. But yeah, if you've read the Manga Splaining podcast, or if you've listened to the Manga Splaining podcast on this rather, they pretty much mirror my thoughts on how I feel about this now. There are issues with it. You can tell very much that the mangaka was possibly early in their career, as the storytelling isn't as polished and refined as, you know, things that I've perhaps read since. Particularly halfway through the series, it ends a particular arc, and you could really say that that's the end of the series. You know, if the series ended with those 2 volumes, it would make sense, and then a new sort of element is shoehorned in. That's like, oh, it seems as though maybe you read it was like, you need to write more, you know, add in a new element, just so it can sell more volumes. So it's a 4-volume long series, and the final 2 volumes you don't really need to read, to be honest, because you know, it wraps up quite nicely at the end of volume 2, and more of the series just seems a little bit sort of forced. It just seems a little bit unnecessary, and it introduces dinosaurs and stuff, and it's like, oh god, are we doing this? So I mean, the ideas and the themes it explores are interesting, but it very much is a, you know, for it's like, it reads like a YA book. You know, it's very much a young adult sort of book, manga rather, and you know, it caters to that sort of demographic. It's not mature storytelling. It doesn't have mature characters, and it's simply not for a mature audience. And so it's one of the, it's just a series that I've now grown out of. Yeah, there we go. That's my reevaluated thoughts on 7 Billion Needles. Like I said, the artwork is all right. Nothing spectacular. It is very much sort of standard. You know, it's nothing incredible, but you know, it's not bad. If I had to give it one criticism, it's that really all the characters just sort of look the same. Everyone's sort of got the same sort of face, you know, just like sort of generic anime girl face. So the artwork, like I said, it's not very refined. You know, that's it really, to be honest. Yeah, let's have a read of the comments before I wrap up. Yeah, God, I am really uncomfortable on this sofa. I've read that one a long time ago, and I remember nothing about it except that I liked it back then. That's why I'm scared to reread some manga like Dead Man Wonderland or Elfen Lied. I'm probably not going to like them as much as I did. Yeah, no, that can happen. You know, tastes change. I mean, things that I would consider masterpieces today, you know, I might not like in 10 years' time. I mean, those series you particularly mentioned, Crash, Dead Man Wonderland, I didn't like that from the outset. I read the first 3 volumes and just didn't like it. It you know, it just didn't gel with me. I just felt it was just angsty school kind of bullshit. You know, I felt too old to be reading it. And if you feel that, you know, if you feel like that, if you feel like, you know, if you feel like a substantial disconnect from something that you're reading, then, you know, it's clearly not for you. Elfen Lied was just terrible. I mean, I've never read the manga. I heard the manga does expand a lot from the anime, but the anime is probably one of the worst things I've ever watched. It's just torture porn. I mean, that scene where like the bludgeon a puppy was, I mean, I wasn't like triggered by it, but I just thought it's just there for shock value. It was so cheap. And I really, really, really hated the main characters. Like the main, what they're called, the monster, Diclonius. Like I like Lucy, like when she was in like her default sort of thing, but when she regresses into that childlike state, I found so irritating. And same with the two other main characters as well. They were just so stupid. What terrible anime that is. I was a very edgy teen even in my early 20s. Me too. Yeah, no, you could call me a late bloomer. I took a lot. I took a lot longer to mature. And I'm probably still immature, to be honest. But definitely in my teens, I was very edgy and angsty, which is I draw everything in black, and I just wear black because I'm just so nobody understands me. Okay. But yeah, no, that's a short one. I'm kind of glad this wasn't a long one. I don't think I would have been able to cope with a 3-hour stream again this month. I can't remember a lot. I can't really remember a lot of Elfen Lied, to be honest. Yeah, I remember the main sort of things. Some scenes sort of stand out to me, but it wasn't even a good anime. The best thing about the Elfen Lied anime was the opening with the kind of Gustav Klimt inspired like artwork. That was the best thing about the anime. It was the opening, and if the opening is the best thing, then yeah, it's not worth watching. And I'm certainly not going to be picking up the manga. But yeah, just to recap. First thing I read in September was the first 7 volumes of Real by Takahiko Inoue. Viz, reprint this, please, for the love of God, reprint this. I know you're never going to watch this stream, but please, for the love of God, reprint this, or restock it at least. There's no point releasing volume 15 if all the previous volumes are out of print or out of stock, so come on, get off your ass and reprint that. Next thing I read was these big chunky boys, High School of the Dead, full color editions, volume 1 and 2. Collects all but one chapter of the entire series that was released. Next thing, again, Two Faces of Tomorrow, Big Thick Boy, and finally 7 Billion Needles. So a short month, or a short stream for a short month. Hopefully I'll read a lot more in this coming month, as the things I have on my immediate to read are just 1 volume and 2 volume series. Currently reading Trigun, and that's only 3 volumes in 2 omnibuses. Then I'm going to be reading The Troublemakers by Baron Yoshimoto, so another Gekiga title. So maybe I'll have a lot more to talk about, as when it comes to Gekiga, I really do kind of I talk a lot. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to cover when it comes to Gekiga, so I'm looking forward to talking about this when I read it. And I don't know what I'm going to be reading after this, as I haven't pulled anything else out of my TBR jar. But for the few of you that joined and stuck around, thank you. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on these series, even if they're all a little bit kind of all over. I never plan to. I don't have a script, as I'm sure you can probably tell with my stuttering and flummoxing on my words, but I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I'll be doing another one of these at the end of October. Obviously these are monthly. Feel free to obviously share it, drop a like or a comment or whatever, and thank you. I hope you have a nice weekend. Crash and whoever else is still here,